Now, on a bit more of a serious note, we were trying to determine how you'd describe your brand of humor. How would you describe it?
Funny.
Most people think they know the whole Cheech and Chong story. Two guys, a lot of smoke, some classic movies, and a whole lot of laughs. But what if everything you thought you knew was just the surface? What if the real story behind one of comedy's most iconic duos is actually stranger, more dramatic, and far more fascinating than anything they ever put on screen? Because here's the thing. Behind every punchline, there was a real-life unfolding, filled with unexpected twists, near misses, and moments that would genuinely surprise you. So buckle up, because by the time we're done here, you're going to see Cheech and Chong in a completely different light. Let's start at the very beginning, because the origin story of Cheech and Chong is one that most people have never heard told in full. Richard Cheech Marin was not born into comedy. He wasn't the class clown dreaming of a career in entertainment. In fact, he was studying pottery at California State University Northridge, genuinely passionate about ceramics and the art of working with clay. Comedy wasn't even on the map for him. What changed everything wasn't ambition or a big break. It was the Vietnam War draft. Faced with the very real possibility of being sent to fight in a war he deeply opposed, Cheech made a decision that would alter the entire course of his life. He packed up and left for Canada. Landing in Vancouver with no real plan and very little money, Cheech did what he had to do. He drove trucks. He unloaded carpets. He kept working on his pottery when he could. Life was uncertain, but he kept moving. Then one evening, searching for any kind of work that would help him pay the bills, he walked into a club in Vancouver's Chinatown. He had no idea that this particular night would change absolutely everything. On the other side of the story was Tommy Chong, a man who had already lived several interesting lives before comedy ever entered the picture. Born in Edmonton, Alberta, to a Chinese father and a Scottish-Irish mother, Tommy had actually tasted real musical fame before any of this. He played guitar in a band called Bobby Taylor and the Vancouvers, a group that got signed to Motown Records. Yes, the legendary Motown. That alone is a story most people don't know. But by the early 1970s, Tommy had moved away from music and into something entirely different. He was running a club in Vancouver's Chinatown called the Shanghai Junk, which he had transformed into a unique blend of burlesque and improvisational theater. Between the entertainment acts, Tommy's comedy troupe would perform short sketches and improvised bits for the audience. It was an unusual setup, but Tommy had always been someone who liked pushing the boundaries of what was expected. So when Cheech walked through the door one night in 1970 looking for work, Tommy saw something in him immediately. Maybe it was his energy. Maybe it was his timing. Maybe it was just instinct. But he invited Cheech to join the improv group. And what happened next was the kind of thing you simply cannot plan or manufacture. The two of them started riffing off each other on stage, and within minutes, it was clear that something extraordinary was happening. Their very first unscripted moment together, a bit about a guy looking for his friend Dave, with the other two out of it to understand, became an instant crowd favorite. It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't written down. It just happened. And the audience absolutely loved it. From that accidental beginning, a comedy duo was born. Tommy played the slow, mellow, dreamy one. Cheech was sharp, fast-talking, and full of energy. The contrast between them was natural, effortless, and absolutely magnetic. Within months, they had left the club behind and hit the road as Cheech and Chong, ready to take on the world. Now here is where things get really interesting, because behind the laughter and the laid-back image, the relationship between these two men was anything but simple. Cheech Marin himself has described their connection as being more like brothers than best friends. And anyone who has a sibling knows exactly what that means. It means love, loyalty, genuine moments of connection, but also real friction, bruised egos, and arguments that could get genuinely heated. Cheech once compared their partnership to how pearls are formed. Through irritation and pressure inside a shell, something beautiful eventually emerges. That's a remarkably honest and poetic way to describe what was, at times, a very difficult working relationship. Creative control became the central tension between them. While both men were credited as writers across their major films throughout the late 1970s and early 80s, it was Tommy who sat in the director's chair for the majority of those projects. For Cheech, this imbalance was a real source of frustration. He felt that his creative voice was being consistently overshadowed, that the partnership was slowly becoming one-sided. The two men have actually clashed publicly over this, with Chung at one point suggesting that Cheech hadn't truly earned a director's credit, and Cheech firing back directly to correct the record. For fans who had always seen them as an inseparable, easygoing team, hearing that exchange was genuinely eye-opening. The breaking point came in 1985. After 17 years of performing together, recording albums, and making films that defined an entire era of comedy, things finally fell apart over a single project. Cheech was excited about recording a song called Born in East L.A. and wanted Tommy to be involved. Tommy declined. That refusal was the final crack in a foundation that had been under pressure for years. Cheech went ahead and made the song and the film independently, and both were successful, but the partnership was effectively over. What makes this even more remarkable is that Tommy Chong has since admitted, with genuine candor, that he was largely responsible for the split. He acknowledged that directing had given him a sense of control and authority that he held onto too tightly, and that it ultimately cost him the partnership. He described himself, in his own words, as having become something of a megalomaniac. That kind of self-awareness, even years later, says a great deal about the man. But here's something that often gets completely overlooked when people talk about Cheech and Chong: the extraordinary range of things they accomplished outside of stoner comedy. These were not one-trick performers. These were genuinely versatile entertainers whose careers branched out in directions that most people would never expect. Take voice acting, for example. Cheech Marin has one of the most recognizable voices in entertainment, and Disney knew exactly what to do with it. He voiced the hyena Banzai in The Lion King, one of the most beloved animated films ever made. He also brought the character Ramon to life in Pixar's Cars franchise, the smooth, stylish lowrider with attitude and flair. And before either of those, he appeared in Ferngully, The Last Rainforest, voicing a character alongside Robin Williams. That's a remarkable animated resume for someone the world mostly associates with a very different kind of film. Tommy Chong, meanwhile, made a memorable appearance as a fictionalized version of himself on South Park, the long-running animated series known for its sharp, irreverent humor. The episode poked fun at alternative medicine and wellness culture, and Chong played his part with self-awareness and genuine comedic skill. It showed a side of him that his earliest fans might not have expected, someone willing to be the subject of the joke as much as the teller of it. And then there was the time that Cheech and Chong showed up on WWE Raw in March 2010. Yes, professional wrestling. The duo appeared on the flagship show as guest hosts while promoting a tour, and they got involved in a segment with wrestler Santino Marella that was every bit as silly and entertaining as you'd hope. They were completely at home in an arena that couldn't have been further from their comedy club origins, which says something genuine about their adaptability and ease in front of a crowd. Now here is one of the most surprising near misses in Hollywood history, and it involves none other than Jason Voorhees. In the mid-1980s, following the success of Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives, the film's director, Tom McLaughlin, pitched an idea to producer Frank Mancuso Jr. that was bold, unexpected, and honestly kind of brilliant. He wanted Cheech and Chong in the next Friday the 13th film. The concept involved the duo either running a marijuana-growing operation deep in the woods or stumbling into the role of new camp counselors who were hilariously unprepared for what awaited them. The image of Jason Voorhees lumbering through the trees only to encounter two completely unbothered stoners is genuinely funny to imagine. The idea was seriously considered, but ultimately never made it into production. It remains one of those fascinating Hollywood what-ifs that makes you wonder just how different both franchises might look today if it had gone ahead. There's another story that most fans of Up in Smoke have never heard, and it involves the famous MUF-DVR vanity license plate that appears in the film. That plate has become one of the most recognized visual gags in the entire history of stoner cinema. But here's what almost nobody knows. Cheech and Chong did not come up with it. The plate was not a Hollywood prop. It was a real vanity license plate that had been registered to an actual Los Angeles Police Department officer. The irony of a comedic icon of cannabis culture immortalizing a cop's personal license plate on the big screen is almost too perfect to believe. But it's completely true. The plate itself had quite a journey before it appeared in the film, having been on several different vehicles over the years. The original owner reportedly still has those plates to this day. It's exactly the kind of stranger-than-fiction detail that makes the Cheech and Chong story so endlessly entertaining. During the production of Up in Smoke, producer Lou Adler held an early test screening of the film. Among the audience that night was Jack Nicholson, already one of the most celebrated actors in Hollywood. The timing, however, was not ideal for him. Nicholson had recently been in a car accident and was dealing with a dislocated shoulder. Anyone who has experienced a serious joint injury understands how painful something as simple as laughing can be. The sudden muscular contractions, the jarring movement, the sharp reminder that your body is not cooperating. Nicholson had been told explicitly, reportedly on doctor's orders, not to laugh. And yet, Up in Smoke had other plans for him. According to Adler, Nicholson sat in that theater involuntarily grunting, groaning, and making all manner of pain sounds every time a joke landed, because the film was simply too funny for him to remain still. The laughter kept breaking through despite the pain. As accidental as it was, his reactions became something of a quality test for the filmmakers. If a joke was strong enough to make Jack Nicholson laugh against his will through a physical injury, it was definitely strong enough to stay in the film. And, as a fun side note, the beat-up Volkswagen Beetle that Tommy Chong's character drives at the start of the film was not a studio prop. It was Jack Nicholson's actual personal car. Then there is the question of how Cheech and Chong actually made their films, because the answer is more surprising than you might expect. Their 1981 film Nice Dreams was made from a screenplay that was reportedly only 3.5 pages long. Not 30 pages. Not 300. 3.5. The basic idea, which started as Cheech and Chong playing landscapers secretly growing marijuana across Los Angeles before evolving into something involving an ice cream truck with a giant clown face, was sketched out in just enough detail to point the production in a general direction. To anyone unfamiliar with their process, this might sound like pure chaos. And honestly, it looked like chaos on screen, in the best possible way. But here's the part that truly surprises people. Despite the minimal written script, the physical comedy in their films was meticulously planned. Every chase, every fall, every perfectly timed visual gag was storyboarded in detail before filming began. They knew exactly what they were doing. The looseness was an illusion, a carefully constructed one. They made improvised chaos look real, and that is genuinely difficult to do. Cheech Marin's contributions to culture extend well beyond comedy in ways that rarely get the recognition they deserve. He became one of the most serious and dedicated collectors of Chicano art in the United States, assembling a collection of works by Mexican-American artists that is considered among the most significant of its kind anywhere in the world. His commitment to preserving and promoting Chicano art led to the establishment of the Cheech Marin Center for Chicano Art and Culture in Riverside, California, which opened in 2022. This is not a side project or a vanity effort. It is a genuine cultural institution, and Cheech has spoken passionately about his desire to give Chicano artists the visibility and respect their work has long deserved. It is a remarkable legacy that exists entirely separately from anything he and Tommy Chong ever created together. Tommy Chong's story also took a serious and sobering turn that revealed a great deal about his character. In 2003, he was arrested and prosecuted by federal authorities for his company's sale of glass pipes and bongs online. He pleaded guilty and served 9 months in federal prison. The documentary made about his experience, called AKA Tommy Chong, examined not just his personal ordeal, but the broader questions it raised about selective enforcement and the politics of the drug war. Many observers viewed the prosecution as disproportionate and politically motivated, a way of making an example out of a high-profile figure associated with cannabis culture. What emerged from the experience, however, was a more reflective and thoughtful version of Tommy Chong, someone who had faced real consequences, processed them with honesty, and come out the other side with a clearer sense of what he believed and who he was. The complete story of Cheech and Chong is one that resists simple summary. Yes, they were the kings of stoner comedy. Yes, they shaped an entire subculture and brought a generation's counterculture sensibilities into the mainstream. But they were also two genuinely complex individuals who built something remarkable together despite constant friction, who pursued careers of surprising depth and variety, who faced serious personal and legal challenges, and who each left a cultural footprint that extends far beyond any single film or album. They almost shared the screen with a slasher icon. They unknowingly immortalized a police officer's license plate. They made Jack Nicholson laugh through physical pain. They built one of the most beloved comedy partnerships in history out of an accidental meeting in a Vancouver club. And they did it while never quite being the easygoing best friends the world assumed them to be. The real Cheech and Chong story is messier, stranger, and infinitely more interesting than the haze of nostalgia usually allows. And honestly, that makes it even better.